some people who've been waiting quite a long time for me to get my finger out and get this book written. I hope you love it. It's going to make a great Christmas present. We've timed it right. It's called Worzel Wooface. The quite very actual Terribibble Twos. Or as Worzel would say, Terribibble Twos.
Book 2 is Worzel's second year. It's the year he becomes a teenager. It's the year all the training and all the hard work went completely and utterly out the window. But it comes back again. What makes Worzel a superstar? If you look at his face, he's constantly thinking, and because of his eyebrows and his ears and they wiggle when he thinks, you can kind of see everything that's going on. It makes it really easy to imagine what he's saying or thinking. He's incredibly gentle. Somebody suggested that Worzel was a rescue ambassador and an ambassador for rescue dogs, and that, as far as I'm concerned, is the highest compliment that they could pay him, because he's actually going out into the world and saying, look, here I am, I'm not the only one. And there are thousands of lurchers and rescue dogs waiting for forever homes. Well, an enormous amount happened, really. I mean, I think for him, the most significant thing that happened was that he finally was castrated, which was a bit of a traumatic experience for all concerned. It looked like it was going to be the easiest thing in the entire world. And then he took a massive dislike to the buster collar that he needed to wear and terrified the living daylights out of himself. And once we got over that and he decided to start speaking to me again, things became a lot easier. He also had his first holiday away from me. And I had my first holiday away from him, which was very strange indeed. He's made new friends. And we went away for Christmas. So yeah, lots and lots have happened. Dozens of minor ones. I think ultimately the reason that we waited to have Worzel neutered, castrated, however you want to talk, whatever term you want to use. We waited a bit longer than people usually wait, simply because Worzel's anxiety wanted to make sure that he was in a really confident place. He's also enormous, and he hadn't stopped growing, and he didn't stop growing until he was well over 18, 19 months. And then it became a question of making sure that he was confident, because this might be too much information, but testosterone isn't just about sex, it's actually about self-confidence and resilience and those kinds of things. And I really wanted to make sure that he had all the benefits that he could get from the testosterone. Unfortunately, one of the disadvantages of it was that he developed a bit of an independent streak, and I was no longer interesting at all. And he's always had a recall. And suddenly he wasn't that interested in coming back, and he was very easy to be distracted, and he wasn't, he'd be sniffing around one hedge, and instead of coming back to me because he'd finished sniffing that hedge, he'd then move on to the next hedge to go and have a sniff in. And that wasn't safe for anybody, and led to one or two embarrassing incidents, particularly one involving a garden pond that didn't belong to me or anybody I knew, and certainly not Worzel. So yeah, so the time had come for it had to be done, and it was the right time for him, and it was the right time for us, and it was probably the right time for the goldfish in the pond as well. In fact, it might have been a little bit too late for the goldfish in the pond, but you know what I mean. I really want another dog, but Worzel doesn't, and that is the reality. And that's the reality that I've got to accept. Worzel loves having other friends to play with. He loves having other dogs come to stay with him. He's got regular dogs that he plays with and who he's confident and comfortable with. But when we have, when a dog's been with us for, say, longer than a week, Worzel's agitation levels start rising. So he starts chasing the cats out of the cat flap, and he starts telling them off more often, and he starts barking at the postman more. Basically, because he is, I know this is hard to believe, looking at him currently, because he is quite an anxious dog. He doesn't get rid of stress particularly quickly or easy. He doesn't just brush things off. And the stress can be positive stress from excitement and joy and enjoying playing with other dogs. Or it can be a negative kind of stress. So what happens is that all these things build up and build up and build up. And he really needs empty space where he's actually doing very little, and where he can rest and where he can get his adrenaline levels back down to normal. And so for that reason, play dates, yes. Visitors, yes. But another permanent resident, no. Not going to happen, unfortunately, because I would love to get another dog. Really well. They are continuing with work that they do and adopting and rehoming and rehabilitating dogs. The founder, Rachel, who was originally Worzel's original permanent home, she's now trained and has qualified as a highly qualified dog behaviourist, and is now running something called Life Skills Dog Training as well. So she's using those skills within the rescue as well. So she's now working on the behaviour side as well. So that's great. A very, very odd, strange, fantastic, amazing, brilliant, and confusing. Was that helpful? Wasn't, was it? I've got to say that I originally thought I'd written a funny book about the dog. But I knew I'd been very careful to do no harm. And I knew that I wanted to emphasise the positives about living with a rescue dog, and make sure that I was honest, but at the same time said this is actually possible. This isn't something that, I'm not a miracle worker. I'm not a specially trained dog handler. I don't have magic skills or special powers. But ultimately, I hoped I'd written a funny book about a dog, which I think I have, and I think people do say it's really funny, and I love that. But lots and lots of people have picked up on the fact about the thread of positive reward-based training, and about the rewards of working with rescue dogs and that side of things, and they picked up on it far more than I originally imagined that they would. And I'm really proud of that, because that was the bit that wrote itself, if you like. That's the bit that slipped in without me thinking about it, which means that's actually something that's really, really a core value of mine, that just got in there without me, almost without me meaning it to. I think he has. I think actually it's really nice, because Worzel, when he first arrived with me, was very unsure of himself. And there were so many things that he wasn't sure about, or that he hadn't experienced, or that had been a negative experience for him. So he was very cautious. And I think in the language in the first book is quite, reflects that. I think it is quite cautious, and I think he is taking tiny little baby steps into the world and coming out of his skin. And I think that for me, as a new author with the first book, there's a level of tentativeness as well. But of course, with the second book, we've both done this already. So he's got more confident naturally as a dog. I've got a bit more confident naturally as a writer. And so we're kind of working in step, which I think is really, really nice, because things have to develop. Worzel's personality is developed, the story's developed, certain things are very much taken for granted now that weren't originally. So yeah, we seem to be working in step, which I think is great. Thank goodness for you, I think, is the message that I would say, because I was looking back, like, weird things to do. On Facebook, there's a back end bit, and you can actually look through and you can find the order in which people liked your page. And there's a lady called Pam Cohen,
and I've never met her. And that's the whole point, because of everybody who likes Worzel's Facebook page. She was the first person to like Worzel's Facebook page that I didn't know who she was. I've never met her. I don't know who she is. But Pam, you were the very first person that I didn't know who liked that page. And I often think of you when I look at the thousands of fans that he's got now and think that was the very start. That was when I started to believe in what I was doing. That was when I started to share everything that was happening in Worzel's life, and he got his voice, and I found a new career. Yeah, and everything that's happened has developed out of that Facebook page and will continue to develop out of that Facebook page. And it's very special, and it feels like our home. When you like a Facebook page and you start interacting with it, the person who's sort of running the page, or the dog who's running the page, starts to recognise names. And one of the real pleasures that I've had this year is that some of the people who are Worzel's Facebook fans have come to some of the events that we've done, and it's really so special when they turn up, and they say their name, and I know immediately who they are. Absolutely immediately who they are. And it's so lovely to talk to them, because quite often they've shared photos of their dogs with us. They've shared aspects of their life, especially when we've talked about something which has happened to us, which has also happened to them as well. And it's an interaction, and it's a two-way thing, and there's no doubt about it. Without the feedback and the encouragement from people doing that, it would be a much, much harder job. You just feel like they're so involved. Some of them take it further than I do, and I have to sometimes read it a couple of times to work out exactly what it is that they're saying, but they join in, and that is so encouraging, and makes what we do just 1,000 times easier and much more fun. And yeah, I mean, it's two ways. It's got to be two ways, and if it wasn't two ways, there really wouldn't be the heart and soul of it. I must mention one other thing that happened this year, which I just think is the best thing ever. A lady got in contact with me, and she said to me, we've just got a rescue lurcher. We weren't thinking of a rescue lurcher before we started following Worzel's page. We had no idea about lurchers, but because they'd followed Worzel's page, they actually went out and specifically chose to rescue a lurcher. And as far as I'm concerned, that is the best thing that can possibly happen from Worzel's page. The fact that people are looking at lurchers and realising that, you know, they're quite chilled out and relaxed and quite user-friendly in many cases, make the most fantastic pets. And Worzel, although he's being spectacularly sleepy at the moment, this isn't that unusual for lurchers. They do like to just lie down and go to sleep where they can, and then race around like nanas when they've got the chance to do that as well. The Dogs Today and Dogs Monthly team asked me if I would go up and help at Dogfest North, and I said yes, of course I would. And I also volunteered to go and help at Dogfest South, and I did some judging for some of their classes. But it turns out I'd kind of been invited along on false pretenses, and so had Worzel, because unbeknown to us completely, we won an award while we were up there. And it was a Dogfest Dogs Today Hero Award, and it wasn't for me, it was for Worzel, of course. Because they really appreciate what he's doing in terms of giving dogs a voice. And I had to go up on the stage, and so did Worzel. And Worzel was really well behaved there, and it's a beautiful award. This is the rosette that Worzel then promptly wore around Dogfest for the next 3 days, showing everybody that he was a Dogs Today hero, which he was very proud about. When we finished here, we're going to see a lady called Penelope Morby, who is an extremely prestigious photographer of dogs. And we hope, we believe, we kind of know that Worzel's going to be on the front cover of one of either Dogs Today or Dogs Monthly sometime before the end of this year. We don't know exactly which months yet, but we do know it will be sometime before the end of this year, which we are ludicrously excited about, because apart from the fact that he's absolutely drop dead gorgeous, who wouldn't want to be on the front of a dog magazine, especially if you were a dog. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Feels like
the ideal situation to
Yeah,
be in.
yeah, absolutely. You're a dog.
Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
It's marvellous. It's all marvellous.